Take a listen to her response to this question from the Daily Mail's John Michael Raish.
President Trump has talked twice in recent days, once at the Kennedy Center and then to Reuters again last night about canceling the election. Why is he talking about this?
I believe you're referring to the president's interview at Reuters last night. I was in that interview. It was a closed-door interview. Obviously, there was not audio or video. The president was simply joking.
I don't know about you, but I find the sitting president of the United States joking about canceling the next elections absolutely hilarious. Absolutely. Just joking there.
The youngest press secretary in United States history has just starred in one of the most embarrassing moments ever recorded in the White House press room. Caroline Leavitt, at 27 years old, faces questions about Trump joking about canceling elections, and her response reveals much more than professional incompetence. It exposes the moral collapse of an administration. But before we continue, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel and leave your like on the video to help our channel continue growing with serious and well-founded political analysis. Watch her response.
Now, the reason, of course, I'm clearly kidding, that this is, of course, alarming and not funny at all, is that Trump keeps bringing up his desire to cancel the midterm elections. And he's doing things to try to make it harder for people to vote. Effectively, he's trying to end our nation's democratic experiment altogether. But the real reason I wanted to play that is because when Andrew Feinberg from The Independent presses her on the issue again, she just attacks him personally instead of answering his question.
Americans for generations have fought and died for democracy, for this democracy. Are you saying that the president finds the idea of canceling elections funny?
Andrew, were you in the room? No, you weren't. I was in the room. I heard the conversation, and only someone like you would take that so seriously and pose it as a question in that way.
I mean, I think a lot of people take the president of the United States threatening to cancel elections pretty seriously, especially given he repeats it and has said it many times.
Journalist Andrew Feinberg asked a perfectly legitimate and necessary question. He wasn't being hostile. He wasn't distorting anything. He was fulfilling exactly the role that a free press should fulfill in a democracy, questioning when the President of the United States makes multiple statements about canceling elections. And the response he received wasn't an explanation. It was a personal attack. Were you in the room? This is the classic disqualification tactic. Instead of addressing the substance of the question, which is, why does the president think it's appropriate to joke about canceling democratic processes that Americans literally died for, Leavitt attacked the reporter's credentials to ask the question. She transformed a question about democracy into a question about who has the right to question. And look at the arrogance of this response. Only someone like you would take this so seriously. Stop for a moment and reflect on that phrase. The White House press secretary is saying that taking presidential statements about canceling elections seriously is a character flaw, that worrying about the preservation of democracy is being overly sensitive. This is institutional gaslighting in its purest form. Let's be absolutely clear. There is no context in which an American president should be joking about canceling elections. There is no tone of voice, no circumstance, no closed room where this is acceptable. And when the president does this not once but multiple times within days, it ceases to be a joke and becomes a test of boundaries. Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He's conditioning the American public to hear authoritarian concepts and react with less alarm with each repetition. First time he suggests canceling elections, there's outrage. Second time, there's concern. Third time, rationalizations begin. Oh, he's just joking. You're taking it too seriously. He didn't mean it literally. This is the gradual normalization of the unacceptable. And Leavitt is not a victim of this strategy. She is an active participant. Her function is not to clarify or reassure. It's to attack those who question, disqualify legitimate concerns, and make journalists feel foolish for doing their jobs. This is not professional government communication. It's state propaganda. What makes this particularly dangerous is that it works. When you attack the messenger forcefully enough, eventually other messengers think twice before asking similar questions. When you transform reasonable questions into personal confrontations, you create a climate where questioning itself becomes controversial. And when that happens, democratic accountability dies. Caroline Leavitt, at 27 years old, is the youngest press secretary in United States history. Her youth, however, is not the problem. The problem is the absolute lack of professional preparation and understanding of the responsibilities the position requires. The function of press secretary is not to be a blind megaphone for the president. It's to be a competent communicator who can defend policies while maintaining institutional credibility. Compare Leavitt's performance with Jen Psaki, who held the same position during the Biden administration. Psaki held briefings almost every business day during the nearly 500 days Biden was in office, becoming one of the White House's primary communicators. Psaki held 224 briefings during approximately 16 months working on behalf of President Joe Biden, a higher number than all of Donald Trump's press secretaries combined during his first term. Psaki's press conferences were seen as professional and typically cordial, although they could become pointed quickly. When Psaki left office, she told reporters that when she accepted the job, she and Biden discussed the importance of bringing back integrity, respect, and civility to the White House. This is the fundamental difference. Psaki understood that her role was to communicate, not attack. She could disagree with reporters, she could challenge the premises of questions, but she did so while maintaining professional dignity. Leavitt, on the other hand, demonstrates a consistent pattern of defensive aggressiveness. During the same briefing in which she was questioned about Trump's statements on elections, she attacked the media as complicit in violence in Minnesota, holding up a photo of a CNN headline. Her strategy is not to clarify or inform, it's to attack messengers and deflect from substantive questions. This incompetence is not accidental. Leavitt was chosen precisely because she doesn't question, because she defends unconditionally, because she attacks when pressed. Beginning her career writing pro-Trump articles in a student newspaper in 2016, at 19 years old, Leavitt was already attacking liberal media as unfair and disloyal. She hasn't evolved into a sophisticated communicator. She has remained a partisan defender without nuance. The problem goes beyond Leavitt's personality. She represents a systematic degradation of the office of press secretary. This is a position that historically balanced loyalty to the president with institutional responsibility. Ron Ziegler served Richard Nixon during Watergate. Even in his worst hours, there were limits to what he would say publicly. There was an understanding that the office had its own dignity. Leavitt demonstrates no such understanding. Trump's approval was at 40% in January, according to the most recent poll from the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research, a number that has remained stubbornly low during his second term. These numbers highlight the challenge he faces in energizing core Republicans while appealing to independents at the same time. And it's in this context that comments about canceling elections become particularly problematic. Trump is not making jokes. He's testing boundaries. He's conditioning his audience to accept previously unthinkable ideas. When a president with low approval numbers, facing historically unfavorable midterm elections, repeatedly jokes about canceling those elections, it's not humor. It's basic authoritarian strategy. Trump told Fox News that historically the sitting president, whether Democrat or Republican, always loses midterm elections, even when they've performed well. He's aware that he faces political defeat, and instead of doing the work of convincing voters, he begins planting seeds that perhaps the democratic process itself is the problem. Leavitt not only fails to contain this rhetoric, she amplifies it. Her defensive and aggressive response to being questioned about Trump's statements doesn't protect the president. It confirms the worst fears about this administration. It confirms that there are no adults in the room willing to say that some things cannot be said, even in a joking tone. The role of a competent press secretary in this situation would be to acknowledge the concern, reaffirm the administration's commitment to the democratic process, and move the conversation forward. Instead, Leavitt attacked the reporter, disqualified the question as not serious, and then refused to accept follow-up. This is not professional communication. It's propaganda, and there are real consequences to this approach. Earlier that Thursday, Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to suppress persistent persistent protests against federal officers sent to Minneapolis to enforce his administration's massive immigration crackdown, when journalists try to ask questions about extraordinary executive powers and comments about suspending elections, and are personally attacked by the press secretary. This isn't just rude. It's a Democratic warning sign. The Trump administration is systematically testing the limits of executive power. And when the media tries to do its constitutional job of questioning that power, Leavitt transforms legitimate questions into personal attacks against reporters. This is the authoritarian playbook. Delegitimize the press, attack questioners, make normal questions seem absurd or malicious. What makes Leavitt's performance particularly concerning is what she represents symbolically. At 27 years old, she became the youngest person to hold the position of White House press secretary. She is presented by conservatives as an icon, an intelligent and beautiful Christian woman who is a devoted wife and mother. But this carefully constructed image contrasts brutally with the reality of her professional performance. MAGA politics has always been about image over substance, style over competence. Leavitt perfectly personifies this. She looks the part, young, superficially articulate, confident before the cameras. But when pressed with substantive questions about democracy and government accountability, she crumbles into personal attacks and deflections. This pattern is not unique to Leavitt. It's systemic within the MAGA movement. Figures like Candace Owens, Kristi Noem, and other prominent conservative female voices preach morality and traditional values while defending politicians and policies that fundamentally contradict those same values. There's a profound hypocrisy in claiming to represent decency and faith while attacking journalists for asking questions about preserving democracy. The issue is not that Leavitt is young or a woman. The issue is that she was chosen specifically because she lacks the experience or independence to push back against presidential excess. Psaki noted that the best press secretaries are people willing to disagree with the president when warranted. Your job is to speak on behalf of the president, but your job is also to be an advisor to the president and give frank advice and disagree when warranted, she explained. Leavitt demonstrates no capacity or willingness to do this. She is a blind defender, not a professional communicator, and that's precisely why Trump chose her. He doesn't want someone who will challenge him internally or represent him with nuance publicly. He wants a loyal megaphone who will attack his critics. The danger here goes beyond Leavitt's personal failings. She represents the ongoing degradation of government norms and institutions. Each attack on reporters, each refusal to address serious questions, each transformation of legitimate democratic concerns into personal confrontations, all of this erodes public trust in institutions a little more. When citizens cannot trust that the White House press secretary will give honest answers, when they see someone holding that office attacking journalists for doing their jobs, when they witness the normalization of jokes about canceling elections, this undermines the very foundation of democratic governance. And Leavitt, intentionally or not, is complicit in this erosion. This episode with Karoline Leavitt is not just about an incompetent press secretary having a bad day. It's about a systematic pattern of institutional degradation, where questions about democracy are treated as personal attacks and where just joking becomes the excuse for normalizing the unthinkable. A free press is democracy's last line of defense. When that line is attacked by those who should be facilitating government transparency, we all lose. If you agree that we need to continue exposing these tactics and defending the truth, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment your opinion about this stance from the Trump administration. Your engagement keeps this channel independent and unafraid to speak the truth that needs to be told.